Hi there. Welcome back to another video. I am Garnett, founder of Brainy Girl, and we help novice course creators get their courses online and into the hands of their buyers. I am super excited today because I have a former client and an incredible human on the channel today. Her name is Katy Dahl, and she has a podcast called Hi, I'm Anxious. She and I are going to have a little bit of conversation about her journey, anxiety in general, some strategies. And I hope that you'll get a lot out of it because I know that Katie's very vocal about anxiety. Many of us have it and are not so vocal. So hopefully it'll open up some dialogue, and feel free to leave any comments and questions below. So Katy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Can you do a little introduction for those who don't know you?
Sure. I am Katy Dahl. I'm the host of the Hi I'm Anxious podcast. I actually have a day job, but I have an entrepreneurial streak. I went to business school for a reason. And I actually have one business currently, an investigations business that's totally separate from this, but I have a heart for helping women, especially women who might struggle with anxiety like myself. So hence the podcast and that new business venture.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction. I will leave a description below of Katy's businesses and her podcast below for anyone who might want to check it out. So let's start with the fact that you're incredibly open on the podcast about anxiety. What sort of brought you to this place or inspired you to share this experience with the world?
I was officially diagnosed with an anxiety disorder a couple of years ago, and the results shouldn't have been shocking to me. At first, I was a little bit surprised, and then as it sank in, it's like, well, of course I do. It just makes sense. I don't like to get caught up in labels too much because I don't want it to become your identity, but I think that it can also help explain and give you appropriate strategies to deal with whatever it is you're dealing with. So that's really what I took out of my own diagnosis. And the more that I researched, talked to people, got to know myself a little bit better, identified how anxiety was showing up in my life, the more people I was meeting that had similar struggles too. And I just knew I have a heart for women. And I knew that this was for me, working with other people who have struggles similar to mine. And the podcast was a really great way to start connecting with women about that topic in particular. So here I am, and it's been a really fantastic learning journey. And like I said, a really great way to connect with other people, just to know, if nothing else, you're not alone in your struggles.
Mhm. So you are a mom, an entrepreneur, a professional. How has anxiety specifically impacted your entrepreneurial journey?
It's interesting because I think it sometimes fuels it a little bit, even just the particular topic of the podcast and the work I'm doing along with that. I'm doing it because I want to help people that have this struggle, and I'm helping by sharing what I have gone through or am going through relative to the struggle of anxiety. And a lot of it does relate to my work as an entrepreneur and just trying to find a way to balance that within my life. I have a calling, I feel like, to do what it is that I'm doing, but also I have the reality that I have chosen to be a mom, and I've chosen to be a wife, and I've chosen to have this career job, and I've chosen to have this other business too. So how do I fulfill that calling on my life and pursue that passion, but then also balance and juggle all of the other things that I've still decided to keep on my plate, so to speak?
So that leads me directly into my next question, which is how do you balance it all? A full-time job, a full-time job as a mom, and these other two entrepreneurial journeys.
Yeah, not real well at times. Sometimes better than others. I feel I've learned a lot over time. I think there's always tips and strategies you can use. I think a lot of it is about systems. So making sure that wherever you can in your various aspects of your life, having systems in place. And that can range from systems of support. Like, I see a therapist. I've worked with coaches in the past. I've got the support of my family members and friends and colleagues. also actual working systems. So when I produce the podcast on a weekly basis, can I nail down a system that's as efficient and effective as possible to get that done so that I can focus on doing other things too? So I think the combination of systems, along with capitalizing on those other types of support I mentioned specifically, like seeing a therapist, getting coaching when needed. And I would say probably the one thing that I struggle with the most is making sure that I've got enough rest and downtime, time to recharge and refresh so that I am able to maintain my creativity and my drive to pursue the passion.
I love it. So interestingly, so I was diagnosed with ADD and anxiety as an adult. And I used to describe anxiety as I actually didn't even know that anxiety was affecting me at all. So I described all my whole life. I've said, I feel like a hummingbird inside, like my heart's beating 1,000 beats per minute and my brain's going. And so I have this combination of anxiety and ADD, which is a wild combination. And people say to me, especially clients all the time, Kim, you're so organized. And I say, it's not natural. It's just that it doesn't come naturally to me. It's systems and processes that allow me to live my life in a somewhat functional way, which
That's
ties
so
right
interesting.
into what you're saying.
I think I've had similar experiences where I've had people comment similarly on maybe my level of preparedness for things or how I eat well and take care of myself. It's if I don't, you
Yeah.
don't want to see what happens because it's not
Yeah.
good. It's born out of necessity rather than just, I like to eat salad every day for pleasure. Not
Right.
really. I know how my anxiety goes if I'm not eating or not eating well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
hence,
And interesting. I'm interested to know at what point in your life did you start to figure out some of these strategies and processes? Because for me, I was in my early 30s, probably.
I think motherhood has been the catalyst for a lot of it. I think that there's something about becoming a mother that causes you to examine your life in a way like never before. It's just this necessity. You're not only responsible for yourself, but this other little being, and you start to see your impact on them. And how can you not pass on those things? Like, I don't want my kids to feel the anxiety I do. So, what can I do for them to prepare them so that they maybe aren't in that position later on in life? And so I think just a lot of it was born out of becoming a mother and the personal growth and gains that I've gotten out of that journey.
Interesting. And for me, it was the same. I think my son was a toddler when I started really realizing that life was going to be really hard or continue to be really hard because now I've added another thing to my plate. And I don't mean to describe him as but it does. It adds a big thing to my plate.
Mhm.
And so now I've got to figure out how to be a business owner and a mother and all of the other roles that I play in my life. Yeah. What are some unique challenges that women with anxiety who are entrepreneurs face versus those who are not entrepreneurs, do you think?
I think that there is a level of uncertainty that comes along with the entrepreneurial journey, which is also why it's alluring, right? It's an experiment. I want to try this thing. Let's see how it goes. And I think that a lack of certainty can be really anxiety producing. One topic that comes up again and again and in conversations with other women, especially that struggle with anxiety, is this topic of control. I'm trying to control things in my life to try to help reduce the anxiety ultimately. And in the entrepreneurial space, maybe you have control over some ways. If you're your own boss, you can control some things, but ultimately, there's a lot that's outside of your control. And I just compare it to maybe like government jobs tend to be stable, low risk, secure in some ways. Whereas being an entrepreneur, you're it. Everything's all about you. If you make money, it's all on you. If you don't make money, it's all on you.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
see a lot of that coming up with the women that I talk to that have their own businesses, just that uncertainty.
Yeah, I think it's both true that there's an uncertainty and there is a control. I have complete control over my environment, which is one of the reasons I became an entrepreneur young. because all of the chatter around me, I was like a squirrel in a forest, right? Like with a whole bunch of nuts. I just couldn't focus. So I have that control. I work in absolute silence. One of my team members messaged me recently and she said, "What do you listen to while you work?" And I said, "Oh my God, that puts me over the edge. I don't listen to anything. It's absolutely silent when I work." And so any kind of distraction around me, that's something that I can control. So there is some level of control, but there's all these other variables that can happen. And you're 100% relying on yourself. So it's risky. So with both of those things, and I guess you wouldn't have either of those things really in a professional setting where you are employed. You are expected to be at a certain workplace, and that is the way it is. There's a certain culture there. You don't have any control over that. But you have the stability and low risk that allows, I think, a lot of people to feel safe and secure in that. For me, that throws me over the edge. That would be super anxiety inducing for me.
Don't make me show up 8 to 5 and sit in that desk all day
Oh,
every day. No, thank you.
I say I am so unemployable. It's not funny. There's zero chance that I could ever go to work for anyone else ever in my life. Thank goodness I've been successful as an entrepreneur because there was no backup plan. What strategies have you implemented? Because we haven't really talked about strategies yet. So what strategies have you implemented to create boundaries between your personal and your professional life, specifically as they relate to how do I reduce my anxiety? Do you do that through boundaries in your personal and professional life, or what does that look like?
Yeah, that to be honest, that is an area of struggle for me. I really have a hard time with it because I'm also a high achiever. So I want to do a really good job. And I think that unfortunately is fueled by the anxiety a little bit. It's like a terrible cycle where I want to do a good job, but then that makes me anxious. And if I feel like I'm not doing a good job, then I got to work a little harder because I got to do a better job. So on and on it goes. In terms of strategies, though, I think again, I'll point to motherhood a little bit. My evenings are sacred to me, so yes, sometimes I have to work in the evenings for whatever reason, and so I want to maintain my after school to bedtime open for family. I want to have dinner with my family. I want to give my kids a bath. I want to put them to bed. I want to be available to them, and that has helped a lot because when I'm not with them, I feel anxious about missing them, and we don't get that time together to regulate then and have those connections. I think connections are really important, especially for people with anxiety. And I think that also just making sure if I need to book out time, I'm going to find a way to do it. If my spouse can't take care of the kids and I need time for myself to work on something, I'm going to find a way to do that. And I'm usually going to do it in a way that's least disruptive. I'm pretty fresh in the morning, so book a sitter for a couple hours in the morning while the kids are playing and hammer out my work, be prepared for it at the time, make the most of those hours that I have to myself, and then go back to being a mom again. So it's definitely a work in progress, and I think probably one thing that I need to overcome to get better at that is being willing to ask for and receive help. That's one tough thing for me. Making that ask, making the plans, being able to receive, and being okay with that too. I tend to leave it as a last resort, and I'm working on getting better at that.
I'd like to be you when I grow up, Katie. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So that leads right into how do you prioritize self-care? What does self-care look like to you? Because we hear this word thrown around, self-care. What does that look like to you? And how do you prioritize that without feeling guilty or unproductive or all of those feelings?
Yeah. Once again, I feel like not real great at it. I think I've got certain standards that I do like to meet. Sleep is a priority. If you're not sleeping well, you're not functioning well. So whatever I need to do to prioritize sleep. I really focus on eating well. So what can I do to have healthy food available that's easy for me to grab, prep, have with me? And then I think following that, I have been better about working in time for movement. And for me, it's all about being willing to be flexible in my mind about what that looks like. Years ago, when I didn't have little kids, working out was going to the gym and spending 2 hours there and drinking a protein shake after. And now it's, hey, I'm standing here in my pajamas without a bra on, but whatever, I'm going to do what I
Mhm.
can while the
Yeah.
kids are in engrossed in something because the time is available to me right now. So just, I think developing a flexibility of thinking so that I can be creative with my time and use it wisely instead of getting stuck that self-care has to be a massage on a Saturday morning. That's probably not gonna happen for me. It's not
Right.
realistic, but maybe it is doing some squats while the kids are busy at play and not needing my help, and I've got a few minutes available to myself. And then just again, I think asking for help, which is not always easy for me to do, but asking my husband, "Hey, I need some time to myself on Sunday. Can we find a couple of hours where you can be with the kids so I can be uninterrupted?" And soliciting his help and then accepting it and walking away when the time comes. Someone might be having a meltdown, but I need to be okay to just, this is my time. They're
Yeah.
being tended to by someone else. And off I go.
Good for you. I don't think I ever mastered that. It's a work in
I have
progress.
not mastered it. At least I recognize I'd like to be better at it. There's that
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah. So that brings up a question for me, which is, how does anxiety manifest? Because when you were talking, I was wondering, is that unflexibility or inability to be super flexible? Is that an anxiety manifestation or is that something else? And that has nothing to do with anxiety.
Oh, that's such a good question. I think I don't know that I know the answer to that because sometimes we have seasons in our lives too, right? I can think of times where I went through trauma, and is it the trauma I'm going through? Is it the anxiety? Is it both? Or I'm at the stage of perimenopause and I'm learning a lot about that stage in women's lives and what can happen physically and mentally as you're going through that. And it's astounding because a lot of the symptoms that I'm reading about mirror anxiety symptoms. So I don't know the answer for that, but I guess when I recognize I've got something like control going on, it helps inform me to know that I do have an anxiety component to say, all right, what is causing? Like, why am I insisting that my toddler get dressed? Does he need to get dressed? He's wearing pajamas, he's dressed, does it matter? Should I be having this power struggle with him right now? And where is that coming from? Is it that I just had in my mind he needed to get dressed? Do I feel like he needs to look nice? No, that's not really my style. But I think sometimes I do wonder what tinted lens I'm looking through when I catch myself acting in a certain way. Like, why am I anxious to have this conversation with this person? Or when I talk to that person, why do I immediately clam up? What is it about me? Is it my people pleasing tendencies? Is it the anxiety? Is it a past experience? Is it all of those things?
Mhm.
And I
So
don't know. I
awareness
don't
is
know.
really important. Understanding what's happening in your body, in your brains, in your gut, all of those things to try and determine what's going on here.
Yeah, I think so. What's that saying? Like, awareness is the first step to making
Mhm.
a change to anything.
Mhm. And most of us are running through our lives so fast that stopping long enough to have an awareness, it doesn't happen for a lot of people because awareness could be scary. Awareness could bring up some stuff for them, or they just don't stop long enough to be aware. So it
Right.
sounds like that's the first step. If you are suspecting maybe that there's some anxiety happening, to just be able to stop. And Katie is not a counselor. This is not a clinical diagnosis show. This is just like what has helped you be able to, I'm going to use the word take control of those moments. Can you give me what are some of the signs that this is an anxiety, that this is an anxious moment, that I'm moving into anxiety
Sure. I would say
for you?
probably the most simplified version of that is, am I focused on anything other than the current moment, especially if I'm future focused? Am I worrying about something that's coming up? Am I worried about the impact something will have in future rather than am I right here, right now? Then I know. Then I know
People
I'm
actually
having some
live in the
anxiety.
right here and right now, hey?
Yeah.
That's
It's
wild. Wow.
I have rare moments of proof that is possible, and I hope to make them less and less rare occurrences in my
Yeah.
future.
Yeah. Wild. So so maybe then when you know that it's happening or you're moving into anxiety, or a more anxious moment or period, what are some strategies that people can do to pull themselves back? Because it sounds like that is the goal, is to pull yourself back to the present moment, which reduces the anxiety. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that has been what has helped me the most. And if you read anything on anxiety, that's what you're going to see come up, something to bring you into the here and now. I think of sometimes if it's really bad, and it might depend on where you're at. Are you in a place where it's appropriate for you to scream into a pillow? Is that going to help you? Maybe. But if you're sitting in a meeting and can't escape it, you have to sit there, but you need to calm yourself, like rubbing your hands on your pants just to feel the texture, or seeing what you can smell, or maybe taking a couple of deep breaths. I think that there's a lot of options using the senses, sight, smell, hearing, taste, touch, to bring you back into the moment to try to help calm the anxiety. Because I think it can spiral really quickly too and just take you to a crazy, overwhelmed place. So, how can I get back into the here and now? I think using the senses can be a really powerful way to do that.
Right. Any other tips that you could give that have helped you be able to reduce the anxiety while still doing all the things that you need to do? Mom, entrepreneur, probably sister, wife, all of the roles that you are engaged in your life, plus all your responsibilities. So you said eating, sleeping well. What are some other things that you think have helped you been able to keep the anxiety down?
I think for me, one of the biggest ones is connection. I didn't realize how much I always pictured myself as an introvert, or thought of myself that way. And I pictured myself as really socially awkward and somebody who just preferred to be alone. But I think that was the anxiety talking to me my whole life. And I've really been paying attention to how much I enjoy connecting with others, whether it's my family members or my colleagues or clients that I'm working with. And because I recognize that, I'm making these purposeful ways to connect with other people, especially people I like throughout the day. So I have a couple colleagues I really enjoy working with. How can I schedule work meetings with them, or do joint projects with them so that we can enjoy that power of collaboration with each other? Making
Right.
time with my kids, purposeful, even if it's just a really short, let me sit down and hold you on my lap and read a book to you, or something like that. I think the power of connection is just so important. It can help you come back to the here and now. It can get you out of that anxious spiral. It can help correct some of the lies that your brain wants to tell you when you're feeling anxious. You can look at your friend and say, am I the weird, stinky one in the room right now? Or,
Right.
or am I not? No, what's wrong
Yeah.
with you? I would never think that of you. In fact, I feel the opposite. So just to have somebody hold up a mirror to you so that the distorted lens of anxiety isn't getting to you too much and taking you into a place where you're not able to see reality at all.
Interesting. It's interesting. After I was diagnosed with, it's actually ADD, not ADHD, I dove into understanding what that looks like and how it manifests differently in different people. And there's so many different manifestations. And I imagine anxiety is like that too, right? Some people want to be around people. Some people who are anxious, I'm sure, want to be around people all the time because that reduces their anxiety of being alone. Other people, like me, and probably it sounds like you, would rather be alone because it reduces the anxiety of being with people. So it's interesting how it manifests differently for different people.
Yeah, and how much of it do you show outside? And in our world, the world of entrepreneurs, we're probably used to dealing with some high achievers. So people who mask it, right? They show up well groomed, on time, prepared. They appear to be poised and confident. And you would never know that inside there's an anxiety storm happening and they're worried about everything but what's happening in the moment. Like, how do I look? How do I sound? Did I prepare enough? Am I
Yeah.
being helpful? What's going to happen next? Will people like this? It's just
Uh-huh.
amazing.
Do you know if anxiety affects more women or more men?
Oh, I don't know statistically
That would
if
be an
there's
interesting
it would
thing.
be. I think especially in our society where I think a lot of anxiety can be socially programmed based on gender. There's women historically are expected to be peacekeepers and caregivers and to be pleasing, look pretty, but not too pretty, be
Yeah.
skinny, but not too skinny, help out in the home, don't be totally dependent on me. It's just, I feel these kind of strange mixed messages that we get socially that maybe males wouldn't get. And perhaps there are some things that men deal with socially programmed that are different than us. Depending on your position, would you be worried to be alone in a room with a woman? Whereas would a woman be concerned about being seen alone in a room with a man or a woman? Maybe not.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah. I have conversations with my women friends, and many of them, I would say the majority of them probably feel overwhelmed most of the time. And I think that's true in our world where we're expected to be everything to everyone and earn an income and take care of children and have all of these responsibilities and be a boss bitch and do this and do that. That is a lot for one person to take on our shoulders. I try and remind them that we're only meant to have so much on our shoulders. And when that tips over, you are going to feel overwhelmed. And generally that anxiety goes along with that overwhelm I found. So I think it's a dialogue that needs to continue to happen and that there shouldn't be a stigma around it. And the only way to get rid of stigma is discussion and dialogue.
Mm, I
So
agree. It's interesting. Among the topics I talk about, overwhelm is one of the ones that I feel like gets the most interaction and response from people. So it's something that people can identify with. I'm in the midst of a overwhelm series on the podcast right now and just getting a lot of good feedback and discussion about it because I think it's so relatable.
amazing. So that leads us over to where can people find you? Where can we listen to the podcast? I'll drop all of these links in the bottom, but tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, thanks. So you can listen to the podcast pretty much anywhere where you like to listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it, it's there. And I also have a website, hiamanxious.com.
Awesome. Hi, I'm anxious.com is what it's called.
That's right.
Fabulous. Okay, so we'll put those links below. Katy, you are sunshine in a bottle. I just adore you. Thank you for joining me today.
Same. Thank you. I appreciate you so much.
You're welcome. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.